I'm sure you would have heard about Aryan Invasion Theory, also called as Aryan Migration Theory, although there is a difference between the two. In case you don't, let me briefly summarize it for you. So, according to this theory, around 4,000, 5,000 years ago, people from European origins they invaded the Indian subcontinent and created a new culture here, wrote new religious texts such as Vedas, and that's how Hinduism, the present day Hinduism or the Vedic Hinduism, came into being. So there are generally two views, one is they invaded, and the other one is they peacefully migrated. But that's the view according to this theory. But there is other side to it which a lot of people in India at least they believe. They believe that nothing like this happened and it was the indigenous people all along who created this religion or who wrote these texts including the language Sanskrit. And there is no surprise that it leads to a lot of politics in the subcontinent because it clearly gives two different ideas of India, of history, and because of the polarization in politics, the left wing and the right wing, they have their own version of history. The left wing generally believes that it's the Aryans who invaded or migrated to India, and the right wing believes it was the indigenous people. Also, according to Aryan invasion or migration theory, when Aryans came here, the indigenous population was pushed down towards south, and that race was called Dravidians. So, South Indians are basically Dravidians. The Indians who reject this view, they consider there is no such different race, Dravidians and Aryans, but all of them are Indians. Now it gets very interesting because in the previous century, there was a wide belief and it was generally taught in schools as well, in colleges, in universities that Aryan invasion or migration was in fact true, but in the recent few years and decades, this view has been challenged. As more historical sites have been uncovered, more genetic data has been found, the evidence is pointing in the other direction. And a lot of Indian writers have been writing on this subject. So there is great enthusiasm when it comes to exploring this subject. One such book is called Aryan Invasion, Myth or Fact. It's written by Dr. Shiv Shastri. And I'm going to read some brief passages from this book. So let's read. Every few months, with the appearance of each new article on genetic makeup of Indians, a controversy is stirred up claiming that there was a migration into India of people called Aryans, bringing the Vedas and the Sanskrit language with them. This theory of Aryan migration or Aryan invasion is vigorously disputed by scholars with evidence to the contrary. Here is an attempt to rewind the start of the controversy and relate how it all began and how its origins match up with known facts. About 200 years ago, no Indian believed that he or she was descended from a separate Aryan race or Dravidian race. These concepts never existed in all of the Indian past. But now there are a sizable number of Indians who have been taught that there existed two groups of people called Aryans and Dravidians. Some Indians now believe that they are descendants of Aryans, while others believe that they are descendants of Dravidians, or like to call themselves Dravidian. Aryans are, by under-informed popular belief, believed to be tall and fair-skinned, speaking Aryan or Indo-European languages like Hindi, Bengali or Gujarati, while Dravidians are supposed to be dark-skinned South Indians speaking Dravidian languages like Tamil. Indians who like to be thought of as being of Aryan descent believe themselves to be rooted in the soil of India, while the political choice made by some people claiming Dravidian affinity is to accept that story and accuse those Aryans of being outsiders who came from a foreign land. It is necessary to unravel how these absurd, divisive beliefs became established among Indians and then try to look at whether Aryans or Dravidians really exist as separate groups bearing stereotypical physical characteristics. Whether an Indian thinks he's Aryan or Dravidian or neither, everyone accepts that Indian history goes back at least 3500 years to 1500 BCE. Among Indians, there was no awareness of Aryan or Dravidian till about 200 years ago. So, how did a nation of hundreds of millions of people suddenly divide themselves into people of Aryan and Dravidian descent? When European scholars came to India along with the British, they were surprised to discover the similarity of Sanskrit to European languages like Latin, French, German, and English. Even more significant was the discovery by Europeans of Sanskrit grammar. Until then, European linguists knew that their own languages in Europe were somewhat similar, but it was the revelation of Sanskrit grammar that made them aware of how and why European languages were related. This was first eloquently elucidated by Max Muller. Initially, European Indologists, philologists, and Orientalists thought that Sanskrit may be the mother language of European languages. Translations of Sanskrit works into European languages threw up the word Arya, a word that has been translated into English as noble people. European scholars ignored or were unaware of the fact that Arya referred to people who strictly followed Vedic traditions. Arya is an adjective that describes people who follow the traditions of the Vedas. People who do not follow such traditions have been described in the Vedas by the antonyms Anarya or Anindra. For Europeans coming from a culture which considered racial superiority important, Arya simply indicated a superior race. And that superior race could not be coffee or chocolate colored Indians. From this was born the idea that Aryans came from the West, bringing a superior language and grammar to India, where it had to be protected from the degradations of the black Dravidians. It was assumed that a caste system was created by Aryans to protect the fair-skinned Aryan knowledge from dark-skinned natives. This was an act of attributing contemporary racist European biases to an ancient people who had composed the Vedas. It was theorized that over centuries the superior Aryans in India interbred with the black people, producing the degraded races in India. The story grew that great white races from Europe came to India, defeated Dravidians, and sent them to South and settled in India, but gradually mixed with Aboriginal Indians and degenerated into current-day Indians who were not equal to white-skinned Aryans. These theories over time came to be accepted as true and filled up scholarly textbooks, making superior Aryans the speaker of Indo-Aryan languages and dark-skinned Dravidians speakers of Dravidian languages as a scientific fact. This was the knowledge imparted to Indian school children as Indians started getting recruited by the British to work for British India. Aryans and Dravidians, who did not previously exist in the history or narrative of India, gradually became part of the Indian narrative and is now accepted fact among a large number of Indians as well as accepted scholarly wisdom in the West.